All right. I think I need to address a few things and talk about a few things. I feel as though the divine creator is laying this on my heart to do this. And then my name has been brought up a few times about the situation. So I want to first start with, and I'm not saying any of this because I want anybody to feel sorry for me. I've already done the root work. I've already pulled all of this childhood trauma out of my subconscious and consciousness. Not out because there's still reference points, but the harm or the pain, the injury of it has been dealt with. Let me just say that. So, when I was 3 years old, my mom took me, my sister, and my brother to this woman. This woman had a teenage son. It was during the school week because I remember all my other brothers and sisters were at school. So we were the ones under the age of 5. I was 3 years old at the time. My sister was younger than me. And then I had a brother that was a year and a half older than me. He wasn't there. So he was upstairs with the babysitter. So the babysitter's son, who was a teenager, older than what Rude was, but a teenager, took me down into the basement. Not several years older, but under the age of 15. We'll just say that. Under the age of 15, older than Rude, older than 11, okay? Took me down into the basement, their basement. And at the time, I had always remembered this boy. Like when you're a victim of this type of assault, your mind as a child and even as a grown adult is to focus on things that have nothing to do with the act that's being put upon you. So what happened to me is he took me down into the basement, and what I remembered was him putting his fingers inside me. That's the only thing I remembered at the time throughout my whole life up until I did, Reiki healing. I had a therapist draw everything out that was subconscious. So at that point, the only thing I had ever remembered was him sticking his fingers inside me. That was it. I remember going down into this basement. The steps were wooden. It wasn't in Vegas. It was in another state. And it was musty. Like when you live in a state where it rains and they have basements, like the cement smells musty. And that's what I remember, the musty smell of the basement. There was one light, those pull tab lights from the ceiling, and it had one of those bulbs in the light. And I remember when he was doing what he was doing to me, I was focused on the light. I was focused on that light. I wasn't focused on what he was doing to me. And I just remained focused on the light. So when I did the root work and the subconscious pulling out of all the things that he did, he literally raped me. So I won't go into detail because I think some people get off on that, because I think there's some people with some very sick issues in their mind and they want to hear about the details of the rape. I'm just going to say it happened to me, okay? And when I was doing the subconscious pulling out of it all, because initially as an adult I was trying to block it off too, because that's what the childhood self of me at 3 years old did for self-preservation. Children block certain things out because that's a safety mechanism in the human brain, is to block things out. So when it was coming out, my mind, and I think there might have even been a spider hanging off of that light at the time when I was focused on the light, when he was doing the things he was doing to me. When I did the subconscious, when I was hypnotized, I saw the spider coming down out of the ceiling like this, right? The legs. And the spider's dancing. But the spider in the subconscious, while it's being pulled out, I see the legs, and the legs are they're lit up. Like they have like, you know how the little lights, the little tea lights, or not tea lights, what do you call them? The little fairy lights. Like there's little fairy lights on the legs of the spider. That's what my 3-year-old self is seeing while I'm being violated. The spider, right? Okay, so that happened, and I remember not shortly after that, because there was always conflict between my mom and my dad. My mom was always running off with the kids. She was always taking us from my dad. And let me just state for the record, my dad never violated me ever one day in his life. My dad loved his kids, and he supported his kids. But my mom had her issues because she had childhood issues. She had issues she was dealing with that she never dealt with. So her emotional state in her relationship with her husband was off. Okay, a lot. Now they had their problems. I'm not going to get into that. There was a whole bunch of stuff. But I remember at this time, my dad took me and all of my siblings. I don't know where my mom was at the moment, but she wasn't with us. And we went to my grandma's house, his mom, and my aunts on his side. And I remember them whispering. I'm in the bathroom. My grandma had this, that kind of tub that had the claws on it, that ceramic tub, and the tile floors, the old-timey houses. And I remember my aunts putting Vaseline on my vagina, okay? And whispering, because I felt like my vagina was on fire. So clearly something happened. They knew something happened. What happened, they didn't know. They had no clue. But I remember my dad taking me to my grandma's house. Now, my dad's dead now. So whatever happened, my dad took us out of the situation. Because I don't know if he knew what happened. He didn't know. But who did the violation was a babysitter that my mom took us to. Because my mom would have her meltdowns and her breakdowns, and she didn't want to deal with her own kids a lot of the times. So she would drop us off at people's houses that we didn't know. A lot of times we'd get dropped off at her mom's house in Missouri. We'd be dropped off there, left for weeks. It'd be 3 of us. My older brothers, they stayed with my dad, but there would be 3 of us. She'd just drop us off and take off, and then my grandmother, her mother, who was fucking Fruit Loops batshit crazy, would be taking care of us. Okay? So, those things I remember. Her being gone for weeks. But left at my grandma's house. Her mom. And her mom didn't like us. So, that's a whole nother ballgame. Let me just say this. What's happening on YouTube is not actually what should be happening. What's happening is they're trying to villainize one person when the truth of the matter is there's a whole lot of victims. There's a whole lot of victimizers who also probably were victimized themselves. And nobody's talking about the greater issue. The greater issue. And then I've heard, I'm a white bitch, I'm a this, and I'm that. Well, even white bitches, quote unquote, get violated. Even white bitches get raped. Even white bitches get violated as children. Okay? So, there you have it. I also was molested again. And this is what tends to happen to children who are violated at a very young age, is they continually get victimized throughout their life by either other people or family members, because it literally is like a demon hooking themselves onto that child once they first get violated, because all of this violation is against the order of the divine creator. All of this doing this shit to children is completely against the divine creator. So if you want to talk about the opposing force, people call it the devil, demons, whatever, there's an opposing force that wants these things to happen to children. And then you have the righteous, I feel, because I feel that righteousness, you don't do that to children. That's a no-no. That doesn't happen. So we want to villainize Rude Amp, right? Now, I know a little bit more because I've had a conversation with Rude. Now, when Rude wants to talk about what happened, Rude's going to talk about what happened. When he wants to really get down to the nitty-gritty, he's going to get down to the nitty gritty. At this point, it's all surface information. And I'm not going to tell Rude's story. I have compassion for Rude because he was a child as well. And what I've learned from this whole situation is even that teenage boy that did that to me, most likely had something happen to him through his childhood. Somebody violated him. Most likely. So with the divine creator, so I'm only dealing with my own personal situation with this, but I was given messages by the divine creator through all this stuff happening. And what the divine creator was telling me was to have compassion even for the person that did that to me. And it's very hard for me to give compassion, especially to adult violators. So it's like the divine creator is trying to fine tune me as a human being because I am the divine creator's child. I might be 54 years old, but I'm still the divine creator's child in the whole working force of the universe. So my guides being messaged through the situation they're from the divine order, okay? And they're telling me that because I have compassion for Rude Amp's situation, and I also want to know, I honestly want to know about that 6-year-old little girl that happened to. I want to know how her mental state and her well-being is, because I can tell you from my situation, every relationship I've gotten into has ended because I never had the capacity to trust. After being violated at 3 years old and then violated again by a family member, an uncle, at 11 years old, who wasn't even blood related. It was my aunt's husband, who she married. And people in the family know what happened. They know what happened. And even at the moment that it did happen, I didn't find out till later that they saw certain things happen and did nothing. Nothing. So I remember when he violated me, when he was fondling me. I was 11 years old. My breasts were just starting to develop, and he started fondling me and started doing stuff. Pulled me down onto him. I tried to get away, and he kept pulling me back down onto him. And then when I did get away, I went in our van and I cried. I was 11 years old and I cried. But from that moment forward, I realized that I didn't have anybody to protect me. I had my divine creator and my guides to keep me away from him and to make sure that wherever he was in family functions, I was never in that vicinity. I went away from him. I was never again in his ability, arm reach grasp to get near me from that point on. And I think those are things that people don't talk about as well. They don't talk about the fact that when a child is skittish about certain family members and you force them, oh, go give such and such a hug and a kiss. No, don't do that to the kids. Don't give I know you can never tell who's going to be doing what to children, because innocent people, children get scared of, because once they've been violated, they don't want to be around any adults. And depending on who violated them, that's the gender they probably don't want to be around. So in that situation, I had to protect myself. But when I became old enough, when I got into my 20s and 30s and 40s, I started talking about it. Because a lot of times children won't tell you because, for one, they don't trust the people around them. And two, even if you do know, they're scared of losing you as a parent, especially if you're the type of parent that says, I'll kill somebody if they do this to my child. Well, a lot of them already know that consequences for killing somebody, you go into prison and you don't see your parent again. So when you start telling kids you're going to kill whoever violates them, you don't give them a safe space to tell you if something ever happens to them, because they don't want to lose you as a parent. That's what I didn't want to happen to my father. I didn't want to lose my father because he was the only rock in my life through through my childhood. He was the only rock I had. So was I going to tell him so something could transpire so that, so that I would lose my rock? No, I didn't tell him. I never told him, to be honest. To the day he died, I never told him. But when I did the Reiki healing and the spiritual work and the dark root work, he knew, because he was already in heaven, or where people want to say heaven. He was already with the divine creator, and he was watching and listening my story. I was able to tell him after his death. I didn't get help until I was in my 40s. And if everybody that goes through something like that got help, if they got help, they wouldn't suffer relationships and trust issues. Okay, we all have our experiences, right? We have our experiences in relationships, and sometimes the relationships go awry. But a lot of times, I'm just going to be forthright, because a lot of times relationships go awry because guess what? A lot of these children, males and females, women, young children, girl and boy, young adults, they've been violated. It's very hard to trust. It's hard to be in wholesome relationships, long-lasting relationships, when you go through certain things like this. And I'm not saying that people who have been violated don't have long-term relationships, because they do. However, there's always some conflict in the relationship. There's always something going on. It doesn't run smoothly. So you can be married 40 and 50 years and be a victim of assault like this and still have conflict. You have conflict. Just saying. So I don't personally want to make this about Rude. I don't want to make it about, and this is the thing, I've heard people say stuff like, oh, and are you really talking about, you're getting graphic. People have gotten graphic on here. And some of the men who have gotten graphic sound turned on by what they think happened to a child. And to me, that's sick. That's sick as fuck. So you need help. If you're graphically talking about what a child went through and you sound in your voice like that shit turns you on, you're sick. You literally need therapy. You need therapy. I feel like a lot of people need therapy. They do. They need help. This is not something that you can dig out. Like, I couldn't, my 3-year-old childhood self really, for the safety of my mental state and my well-being, blocked a lot of shit out. I only remember little bits and pieces. So it blocked a lot of it out. My thing is, stop making this about an individual and start having the hard conversations about what's taking place. What can you do to prevent this, to break the cycle of dysfunction and abuse? What can you do as a person to break those cycles? That's where my mind's at. What can we do? What can we do so that the future children coming up and the future star seeds that are coming to, make this planet a better place? What can we do? What can we do to make this a better place? What can we do to not make it personal and to make the cycles be broken? That's where my mind's at. How can we break the cycles? That's what I want to know. And yeah, I mean, there's a person on here that I care about, and I've heard that she said something in videos, and I haven't listened to them, about me. My virtue remains the same, and I'm going to tell you, even being raped as a child and molested at 11 years old, my divine creator has built me up. My virtue is still intact. My virtue and my beliefs and my core feelings about things are still intact. I'm very analytical now about stories people tell me concerning their abuse. I have compassion, but I'm analytical, and I want to know, because things that you need to delve in and find out is what's going to break cycles. So I still have a moral backbone. I still have virtue, but I really want to help other people And I want people to get to the point of breaking cycles, breaking generational curses, breaking things that don't suit or serve people in a better capacity. So yeah, this white bitch is going to talk about it. Have a nice day.